Thanks, Chris. And developing news out of Russia this morning. It's believed Wagner mercenary boss Evgeny Prigozhin was listed as a passenger on a plane which has crashed, killing all 10 people on board just north of Moscow. Prigozhin led the notorious private military group that had a failed rebellion against Russian forces in June. International relations expert Robert Patman joins us now. Good morning. Thank you very much for your time, Professor Patman.
Good morning, Anna.
Is this information reliable? We know he was on the passenger list and we know that everyone is dead, but we have to still join the dots there that he was on board.
Yes, nothing has been really fully confirmed yet, but it would appear that indeed, Prigozhin has been named as one of the people on the list. But interestingly, a media channel favoured by the Wagner group says the plane was shot down by air defence, and there are reports, unconfirmed reports, of vapor trails and airborne explosions. So we'll just have to wait and see. But there's a bit of speculation, obviously, given Wagner's response to this incident, that it may have been some sort of attempt to take the plane out. But we'll just have to see.
It's very unusual, considering how many planes are flying around the world at any one time, for a plane to come down, let alone for it to be taken down. So I understand what you mean when you're saying there's an airborne explosion. What would a vapor trail indicate? And talk me through what an air defence system is.
Yeah, I mean, many people are looking at the Russian government. Mr. Putin's people who fall out with Mr. Putin or deemed to be an enemy of Mr. Putin often have an unhappy ending, so to speak. But we shouldn't rule out the possibility of other groups who may have a reason to attack Wagner's leader. There are a number of partisan groups who oppose the war. And remember, Mr. Prigozhin was an enthusiast for the invasion. It's just he didn't think it was being prosecuted very well. So there may be those groups within Russia who've been very active, actually, who are pro-Ukrainian and actually oppose the war. They may also have motives for being involved in such an incident, but we just don't know. It may have just been plain failure, that engineering failure on the plane that may result in this. We just don't know.
Yeah, which would be obviously terribly unfortunate, but Evgeny Prigozhin had a deal to go to Belarus. He's been reportedly in or travelling around Russia actually for the past month or so. Not that I want you to cast judgment on this, but I would have thought it was a reasonably unwise idea to be going anywhere near Russia when you had a failed attempt at seizing power, or at least upsetting the guy who used to employ you.
Yes, I think Prigozhin had no illusions about Putin, and many Russian observers believe one or the other would not survive in the course of the next 6 months. And the other thing is that, depending on what emerges in the next 24 hours, I think Mr. Putin could be facing other challenges in the not too distant future. He's arrested a number of military people associated with Prigozhin in the last month or so since the failed coup. And there's real signs of tension in Moscow at the moment. So, yeah, Russia could be entering quite a turbulent domestic phase, with or without Mr. Prigozhin being present.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, not necessarily that he held enough power to destabilise the way Russia is being propped up at the moment, but certainly this will be unnerving for people who live in Russia and will obviously get this news from the state agency about what this means between the power players who are in charge.
Yes, I think also on top of this, the political uncertainty is the fact that the Ukrainians have stepped up their military activities. Drone attacks in Moscow are becoming a regular feature now. And that is bringing, in a sense, as Mr. Zelensky promised, the war is being brought home to the Russians in their capital. And so for a long time, the Russians seem to assume under Mr. Putin they could conduct their war in neighboring Ukraine and keep Russia insulated from the consequences. But that assumption is rapidly unraveling now.
Professor Patman, one last quick question. Can we expect an open and transparent investigation, or at least a finalised report as to what happened here?
Well, this is an authoritarian state. We're not dealing with a liberal democracy where you've got the media to keep them on their toes. I don't think we can have that expectation. Although if Mr. Putin's not involved, he may go to extraordinary lengths to try to demonstrate that it was not anything to do with him. And so we'll just have to all wait. I can't imagine that sort of investigation. As I said, there's so many people who've crossed paths with Mr. Putin in the past, and they haven't survived to tell the tale. So one has to be a little bit cautious when we talk about a full and frank investigation.
Surely more to come. Professor Robert Patman, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Thank you.